Okay. Hello. Whoa. Good afternoon and welcome to the Green Party of Utah Spring Convention. Thank you all for being here. We have a wonderful lineup for the day. Really want to say thank you to Palmer Sound for helping set us up for this event. And we'll start out by acknowledging the land that we currently are having this meeting, now known as Utah, is the ancestral land of the Ute, Paiute, Hopi, and Dene nations. We have a website that everybody should check out. It's greenpartyofutah.org. So please visit that site. You can see what we're up to, donate, and contact us. We have a sign-up sheet over on the desk. We have snacks for everybody. And we also have a Slack channel. So if anybody's interested in joining us on Slack, please reach out to us and we'll get you set up. Again, thanks to everybody for being here. My name is Russ Wagstaff. I'm the co-chair of the Green Party. And my other co-chair is Dee Taylor. And she is now on screen. And I think that's all I have.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be here, and that was a really powerful film. This is the first time that I've watched that before. And wow, yeah, that was excellent film. And so now, the panel that we have here, we're seeking to examine the current challenges facing disability rights here in Utah. And that's drawing from the transformative narrative that we just saw in Crip Camp, and also addressing the urgent legal and social challenges threatening disability protections, while also highlighting some of the advancements, the advancing, highlighting the opportunities that we have to advance independence and inclusion here in the state and in the country. So we've got our panel members here, and I'll introduce each of them with a brief bio here. We will start with Adam Guymon here, and Adam is a legally blind disability rights advocate and the Americans with Disability Act coordinator for the Green Party of Utah. He was born in Ogden with a hereditary eye condition, and Adam has navigated disability from birth. In 2001, he survived a UTA, or Utah Transit Authority, bus wreck, which led to additional diagnoses, including NEX-MIF, a rare genetic condition which affects brain development, mobility, and other neurological functions. Adam's lived experience has fueled a lifelong commitment to challenging ableism and fighting for accessibility as a human right. He has formally been involved with the Disabled Rights Action Committee and Utah Against Police Brutality, and continues his advocacy through the National Federation of the Blind of Utah and the Neuro-Inclusive Autism Community Coalition. His political awakening began in 2012 when discovering Dr. Jill Stein in the Green Party. which inspired him to restore the party's official ballot status in Utah. And today, Adam works to promote disability justice, environmental responsibility, and systemic equity. He proudly embraces the word disabled and believes accessibility should be a right, not a request. He continues to advocate for disability education at all levels and for strengthening the ADA to reflect the full diversity of the disability community. Next, we have Shannel online there. And Shannel Pitman, she has seen inequality most of her life and sees our work here in the Green Party as the most effective way to fix it. That is why she's fighting. Oh, that is what she's fighting for. As a baby born 4 months too early, doctors didn't expect her to live through the night, but she pulled through. Her parents were not of means to meet their special needs as a toddler, so it was better for everyone that she lived with her aunt instead. She has cerebral palsy, so their education began at special education schools in Mar Vista, despite being a South Central resident. And busing out of the district was a privilege afforded to her until middle school, where they could see the immediate difference in the quality of the school. She saw those same differences again when they moved to Corona, California, where they attended a middle school with the kind of amenities one expects in college. And they were excited to try them because they were still in a special education program despite being gifted and mainstreamed. But she was excluded from participation in clubs and classes that she wanted to take. She got very little out of that school for that reason, and their next school back in South Central was no different, except for the fact that now classmates were bullies, and the quality of every education suffered because of lack of funding again. She got into and graduated from a Green Dot charter school, where her history teachers stressed Black Latinx unity and the history of empowerment that South Los Angeles gangs originally had. If it wasn't for socially conscious history teachers and the clear difference in treatment one experiences as a poor, Black, queer, disabled Muslim to be, she feels she wouldn't have had the anger required to get into activism. And next, we have Casey Reyes here on my left. And Casey is a rising senior at the University of Utah, majoring in strategic communication with a double major in business management and psychology, all with the hopes of pursuing a career in public relations. He represents the National Federation of the Blind of Utah. He serves as the vice president of the Utah Association of Blind Students and co-chair the membership committee of the National Association of Blind Students. And in their free time, they enjoy cooking, traveling, attending Utah Ute football games, and anything fitness related. As a blind person, they're often subject to low expectations set by society on the perceived abilities of blind people. He believes it is essential to advocate and promote that blindness is not what holds one back from living the life one wants, and that as such, it is ever so important to continue to push what is possible and raise the bar in terms of the abilities of blind people. And finally, on my right here, we have Andrew Riggle. And Andrew has been the Disability Law Center's public policy advocate for 18 years. Mr. Riggle works closely with selected officials, policymakers, and community partners to enable individuals with disabilities to live self-determined, independent, and integrated lives in their community. And prior to joining the DLC, Mr. Riggle served as Medicaid Policy Director for the Utah Health Policy Project, where he focused on strategies to increase access to medically necessary care, improve the quality of care, and manage costs within the program. Before joining the UHPP, Andrew helped low-income students and their families access community resources as West High School's Family Involvement Coordinator, and he has a master's in educational counseling and a bachelor's in sociology. So that is our panel for today. What a excellent panel, if I might say. And so how this will work is we have a number of questions that we will pose before the panel, and we'll try to stick to about let's see, it's 4 o'clock now. Maybe 6 or 7 minutes per question. And however, whether that be one person who uses that time, or if we can get multiple answers from panel members, that's how we'll try to do it. But you know, we're not too strict around here because so to start it off, we will begin with this first question here, which is, how do legal challenges threaten existing disability rights protections? And if you like to speak, you can go ahead and answer. Yeah.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Basically, there was a law that's put into place, or it's SB 199, that is basically lawmakers are weakening the ADA through basically a lot of laws, and pretty much that's affecting a lot of people with disabilities, whether it's because of for access as well as for being denied, whether it's being denied services or things like that. Access takes a lot of, it's not just is there a ramp there, is there a ADA button to open the door, but accessibility takes a lot of formats, such as if someone can't read something because they can't see it, and it's not just a convenience to just be able to have something in a different format so you can read materials.
I hate to be the Debbie Downer after Crip Camp, but that seems to be the role that I'm most comfortable in. So I apologize to everybody ahead of time. But I'll just and I wrote all of these down so that I would remember them, but also to keep me on track and make sure that I don't babble and take up everybody else's time. From our perspective, I think the most current threat is slashing safety net programs like Medicaid, food stamps, and Section 8, because as we all know, many people with disabilities depend on them for survival, and it feels like all of those are under existential threat at the moment. Another one that I wanted to note, and this always surprises people, is the ADA is the only federal civil rights law that relies on the government, on an individual rather than the government to enforce it. And reasonable accommodations or modification denial claim can be hard to win, because one must usually show it isn't an undue burden or financial hardship to an employer or a place of public accommodation or in housing to make that. A pre-hire discrimination claim can be hard to prove, because an employer can't ask about disability before making a job offer. And even after 35 years, businesses continue pursuing um, uh, reasonable notification legislation because they claim they don't have enough awareness or notice of their obligations to provide accessibility under the ADA. And then the next one that is another immediate one and directly related to what we just saw is that Congress will likely try to repeal the newly updated Health and Human Services 504 regulations, which reinforce the duty of healthcare professionals and programs to make sure patients with and without disabilities have access to the same quality treatment and services. And then this is also relatively recent within the last year or so, thanks to the Supreme Court. Rather than relying on agency subject matter experts, courts will be asked to interpret unclear or vague regulations more often. And finally, on a slightly more positive note, fortunately, it's much harder to overturn underlying law than it is to tinker around the edges with regulations. So regardless of what happens with regulations, at least for the moment, we still do have the ADA and the Rehab Act. So cross your fingers.
Awesome. So yeah, I very much agree with what my two other fantastic panelists have said. But as for me, I believe that the dynamic between the legalities of the law, the almighty law, and disability rights is very, very skewed. Why? Because I think that people prioritize the law more than rights. It's almost like the law makes rights of people with disabilities or rights of anyone in that matter minuscule, and when it really should not be that way. And I feel like people are kind of like hesitant to challenge that because of all the various challenges and penalties that go against going against the law. And so I feel like if we use the legalities of the law, maybe in the verbiage or the way you frame the law, to kind of make rights seem more applicable and more important, then that will start to transform the way that we look at that dynamic of the legalities of the law and rights. And maybe perhaps the regulations that will start to come out will soon start to prioritize and highlight the great importance of the rights of every single American and people who live in this country. And who knows, maybe one day, all the standards, rules, and regulations as it pertains to the law and disability rights will go global, and other countries will start to follow suit. So that is the hope.
Well, it was actually very clearly defined by an earlier panelist, but like it's kind of ridiculous that we have had a law on the books for 1990, July 1990, 30, almost 35 years, but not for another month. That's not as complete as it needs to be. I'm really grateful that Supreme Court case that was gonna strip 504 protections from pretty much everyone was put on hold because that was scary. But now I'm thinking about, the Medicaid cuts, the SNAP benefits cuts, and the laws that are attacking mail-in voting all work together to like negatively impact disabled people as we need to be able to vote to, shore up some of the rights that we have still that can be put into law to be shored up. honestly, I don't know what we're supposed to do about the whole people attacking mail-in voting things because because most voting centers are churches, they're not required to be ADA compliant because for some reason there was a carve out for churches putting the ADA for some reason I still have yet to understand. Like, I don't get it. If you get tax exempt status, that doesn't seem to me that doesn't make sense that you should be able to not have your building be ADA compliant. Like, don't people who are disabled need the Lord too? Religious people that are going to try to say that that are going to try to say they're trying to reach out to everyone. Why do you have a building that a disabled person can't get into? I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. But I don't want to go on that tangent too much. Over.
Great. Thank you, everyone. All right. I think we can move on to our next question then. What are some of the systemic barriers that you've maybe seen or noticed which prevent full independence and equality?
Is it okay if I start and fulfill my responsibility and then let everybody else be hopefully a little bit more positive?
Please do.
All right. I'm sure it will come as no surprise to anybody in this room or on Zoom that our environment is designed by and built for people without disabilities. And that also many folks are still scared of disability because they don't see it every day. We still, for example, we still segregate some special education students in self-contained classrooms. As somebody else has already mentioned, we generally have low expectations of people with disabilities. For instance, unlike their peers without disabilities, some students with disabilities don't participate in the post-secondary education and career exploration curriculum. And it's also still legal to pay certain employees with disabilities less than minimum wage for a menial job. People with disabilities must be, there's a belief out there that people with disabilities must be protected. However, research shows that individuals with disabilities who are supported in making more of their own choices are less likely to be abused, neglected, or exploited. Even so, we tend not to embrace the dignity of risk. Instead, teachers and doctors often default to guardianship as the only option. Additionally, shelter workshops still exist. Finally, some families believe nursing homes are safer than the community. I think somebody was touched on this briefly earlier, this idea briefly earlier as well, and that is that we think of disability rights as negative as a negative rights rather than positive rights. For instance, freedom from rather than right to. We also tend to think of in terms of equality rather than equity. And finally, largely because Medicaid is a low-income health insurance program for which the states share responsibility and onto which long-term services and supports have been grafted, we don't sufficiently fund the continuum of services or supports for individuals with a range of disabilities that individuals with a range of disabilities need to be successful. So I'll let others bring us up from there.
Let me look here. So one of the things that I took on my notes is like public transit. Unfortunately, public transit, even though buses have ramps and lifts, which in the beginning they didn't, and a lot of disabled people had to sit in front of buses in order to show, public transit companies that, they wanted to have the same equal rights as anyone else to be able to ride the bus, just like another person without a disability. But even though we have that, we still have barriers even within public transit, even today. And without being in the position of being disabled yourself and seeing what it's like, most people don't really care, unfortunately. And the fact of the matter is that disability is part of, I can say that for myself, it's part of my life and it's part of who I am. And when paratransit, for example, I'm paratransit eligible with UTA, but because I use a power wheelchair, they told me that I was not able to have full paratransit eligibility. And that actually sometimes can be a huge barrier, because if I'm not able to use the fixed route in an area, it becomes a big mess. And unfortunately, that's just the plain truth.
I think that perception is a really big thing. Uh, Disabled people are very much still viewed as different, and I think that's something that we're always going to have to continue to deal with. But I think that it's such a big systemic barrier, because a lot of disabled people, no matter your disability, their abilities are often underplayed because we're not really given a lot of opportunities per se. For example, I used to be a ambassador for the University of Utah, and basically what I did is I conducted campus tours of the ginormous campus. I traveled around the country to recruit people to come to the U, and I had to apply for this job a few times, not because they didn't believe that I could do it, but because I think they had a lot of reservations about what I really could do. And not to mention, I was newer to the university. I was transferring from another institution. And so I really had to show them that, yes, because I'm blind doesn't mean that I can't show you around. You have no idea how many times I gave a tour of maybe like, I don't know, 50 people, and there's usually two ambassadors, and we split the group. It would take often like a long time for people to come to me, because they're like, how's the blind person gonna show them around the campus? And so I used this joke so many times, and I said, don't worry guys, just because I'm blind doesn't mean that I can't show you around the campus. I'm certified, I promise. You have to do an exam to show you around the huge campus. But I digressed. And so I think that if blind people and all people with disabilities are given more opportunities in public to do anything, whether that be working at a movie theater or going to the gym or anything, and everyone starts to see what's where the disabled people are people too. We're really cool people. We just do things a little bit differently. Then I think that all the stereotypes will start to go down, and people will start to care more about our rights. Because I often feel that disability rights is looked as not a high importance, because it's like that's their problem. So how does that impact me? And so I feel like if we use our various platforms and our various movements to advocate and show that all of our rights matters, then we will all be able to fight for our rights together in unity.
Sorry. It's there's a genuine lack of equity when it comes to almost everything in this country as it relates to what disabled people have access to, especially as it relates to transportation, but also housing. I mean, for me, for instance, where I live now is not the most ADA compliant place to live, but it's accessible enough for me and I'm happy with it. But my landlord was worried when I moved in because there are stairs and she didn't want me to fall or anything like that. But I've, taught myself to climb stairs already and taught myself how to fall without hurting myself and all that. So it's like I know what to do to prevent something bad happening to me just because there's stairs at my house. But when I think about the broader situation, there's this there's this what is the word I'm looking for? There's this like notion that has been put to the back burner to make things accessible. Like it seems like they made it so that the accessibility was optional. And because there's a lack of equity in how they produce things, we're not using universal design so that we can design things that are accessible for everyone, whether they have a disability or not. We have a situation where we have a bunch of buildings and apartment buildings, what have you, where people can't use them effectively if they have any kind of disability because of the way they were built, because no one thought of us when they were building these things. We really need to figure out a way to get universal design on the code of books of building things so that people have access to the full scope of their communities. That integration that we should have, the integration that we have a right to be here just as much as someone without a disability does. I don't understand why, well, on paper, I understand why. It was because they were putting us in institutions instead of letting us live inside the community. But now in 2025, I'm sitting here wondering why is there a resistance for people to update their buildings so that we can use them? I mean, it's not like disabled people are that broke. We'll spend the money if we can get to your establishment. At least I think so for most places. It's just, I don't know the word I'm looking for. It's frustrating to say the least.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Well, let's continue on to the next question then. How do you feel that communities can build resilience in the face of these sort of ongoing challenges?
I would like to actually say that I believe that education about disability and accessibility should be taught at a very young age, not just as a suggestion. It should be a requirement in school from as young as preschool all the way through even college. In order to be able to graduate, you would have to take courses and learn about how to treat disabled people, how disability and accessibility affect disabled people, and everyone, even disabled people, would be able to take those kinds of courses to be able to learn from a young age, because unfortunately older generations have before looked at disability in a different light versus today. And in 2025, I believe as well that if generations grew up learning how to talk to disabled people or how to treat disabled people, then a lot of the ableism that is shown and is I can't think of the word, but basically how ableism is used in the world today, if we were to change that, that would actually make a huge difference, because people would actually see disability as an equal or a normal thing in life, and it's not something that's secondary. And then the other thing too is, if businesses, before they would be allowed to get their business license, they would actually have to take a course under the direction of the ADA meaning that they would have to actually do it under their supervision, and they would have to pass. And if they were able to pass, then they would be allowed to receive their business license, because I know there's a lot of businesses out there that like to skirt around the ADA. And for example, let's say someone has a service animal with them, and they go to a store or a business, and the business owner or employee says, sorry, no dogs allowed. And they're informed about that it is a service dog by the handler, but the person says, no, I don't care, it doesn't matter. Pretty much businesses have a way of getting around the law by the law that states that if a business can actually, they can deny service for no reason or any reason at all. And what they do is they contact the police and will pretty much have someone trespassed to get around the law. And so I believe highly that if the education about accessibility and disability were brought to pass, that would actually help a lot with making the ADA stronger. Over.
Well, these next couple of questions were strange for me because they actually required me to think positively, which, as you may have gathered, is not a natural state for me. So, I tried my best. But the two things that I was able to come up with are one. Is much of the positive work in community mental health is being driven by peers. Examples include the push for non-police crisis response by groups like CAHOOTS in Eugene, Oregon, and STAR in Denver, Colorado, and peer-run crisis departments like the one operated by Mental Health America of Utah. And the second thing I was able to come up with is, and I think this Crib Camp is one of the best representations that I have, or examples of this that I have seen, and that is engaging in collective advocacy. Join with others who have similar experiences or concerns to share your story with policymakers and elected officials. For example, through the Protect Medicaid Utah Coalition that has been organized to push back on the proposed cuts to Medicaid at the federal level and the proposed work requirement on the state level. So there's an immediate opportunity if anybody would like to join us in that. And then also I think it's important to remember that even if you're not immediately successful, you will learn how to play the game better going forward and grow your support network in the meantime by working with and through others. So
When I think of this question, I think of when you're in the gym and you want to push a new PR, new personal record. So as it relates to building resilience and everything, it is very important to know all the ins and outs of what it is you're advocating for, because there's always going to be pushback and counter arguments about what you're advocating for. So constantly refining your arguments and finding new ways to frame the way that you phrase your various arguments and what you're advocating for may help a lot. And that's going to take a lot of falling down. That's going to take a lot of struggling. Sometimes you won't be able to bench the 135 or to reach all the way to 275, right? And so, which is why you're going to need a spotter, someone to make sure that the bar doesn't fall down on you. So you're going to need a community, whether that be your allies, maybe those who are not disabled, or a community who's like you. Like for me, I turn to my blind community, not just my blind friends, some of my blind educators, my vocational rehabilitation counselor, I also turned to other blindness organizations, like, of course, the NFB, the American Council for the Blind, the American Foundation for the Blind, and all of these various organizations can come together and advocate for what it is we want to accomplish. And I think that with each building block and each uh, block that comes our way or barrier, it makes the team a little bit tougher, a little bit harder, so that you can come back fighting harder than ever. And overall, you learn together. You can do so many things on your own. Each person, as a part of a movement, whether that be a disability advocate, or any sort of team, they bring a lot to the table. But when you're able to do that with other like-minded individuals, people who are like you, who have the same common goals as you, you're able to make so much more noise than just doing yourself. An example that I think of is there was recently a rally held at the Lyft and Uber headquarters in San Francisco that the National Federation of the Blind organized. And what did that do? That brought a lot of attention to the very much controversial and heated debate surrounding rideshare denials and service animal users, specifically guide dog users. And that was there, and that was a great demonstration. And so now the question is, when moments like this happen, now that you know you're out there, how are you going to continue to build from that? Now we brought awareness of this issue. How are we going to continue to refine our arguments and push forth towards all that progress that we desperately, desperately would love to see in the world?
One of the ways I think we can build resilience is to let other people that are not disabled know that they can become disabled anytime. Disability is the one marginalization that can happen to anybody at any point in their lifetime. So people need to stop seeing disability as this thing that is like not able to be understood, that just kind of exists as something for someone that's not you, and put yourself in the shoes of the next person next to you, knowing that it's possible that you could experience a disability causing event in your lifetime. I think it's really important to, crucially important to educate people on disabilities so that people remember that people with disabilities are humans, and just like you have the same needs, wants, and desires, they just sometimes might need accommodations to do something that you might not need accommodations to do right now. Because one thing about it is, age has a tendency to happen and cause people to experience some level of disability as they get older, and people don't think about that. There's a community that's just, there's a community in the disability community has existed for a long time, and there's a lot of people that like haven't quite known how to interact with that community. But I think if you come into it with a humble heart, willingness to learn, and to not like judge people because you don't understand them fully, you'll have a better situation to go into with people, with community, with your neighbors, because there's always something more than you do, whether they're disabled or not. The lived experiences of disabled people lend themselves to understanding the world in a way that you wouldn't think to look at it until you talk to somebody that has this particular different way of doing things. The resilience comes when you remember that the person next to you might not be disabled now, but could be disabled later. And those people need to understand that, like, this community is just like here for you if you need us, but also something that you can learn from. Like, disabled people are very resilient and strong. And if community needs to build resilience, you can build it with us if you just like see us fully as full, capable human beings. Disability doesn't mean that I can't, it doesn't mean that I can't help you with your goal that you're trying to reach also. We got to work together in this. And I think that comes from that starts from remembering the fact that, you could be disabled whenever. You don't know what'll happen tomorrow. So, be open and start building with your neighbors what you can so you can have that resilient, strong community that knows how to fight this thing that is attacking all of us. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. For this next question, it is what innovative approaches can advance disability rights? Like, are there any sort of novel or maybe approaches that you see are underutilized or have a lot of potential, or any ideas that you think could be used to advance disability rights?
Okay. If nobody objects, I guess I'll start. Um, Unfortunately, at least in Utah, the few efforts that exist are led by parents rather than individuals with disabilities. Thankfully, one of these, We All Belong, is a group of younger moms arguing for inclusion in the regular education class in the regular education classroom and pushing back against school districts trying to assign their students to hub schools based on diagnosis rather than ability. And then the other one that is somewhat hopeful as well that I was able to come up with is before the pandemic, the DLC sued Utah for not offering individuals with intellectual disabilities wishing to move out of an institution an opportunity to do so. In response, the state agreed to educate facility residents about their options and create a support system for those wanting to return home or to their community. Almost 6 years later, over twice as many have chosen to do so than required by the settlement. So that we were surprised and really excited by the results of that as well. So
I basically would have to say that, looking at innovations, like, I guess one thing is, universal design is one of those things, as well as using what was it here? Sorry. Oh, basically, universal design is a big part of it, as well as just I wasn't prepared very well on this question, but basically, it's just important that that the disabled person, as well as being listened to, not because I know there's people who are not disabled, they are willing to tell a disabled person what they are supposed to think or feel, but it's important that the most important is listening to disabled people, and because one thing I will say is disabilities are a spectrum. Two people could have the same disability, and even though they have the same disability, their lives in some aspects are exactly the same, but in some aspects are totally different. And it's important not to judge a person by saying, well, my sister's in a wheelchair or my brother's in a wheelchair, but and they get out of their wheelchair and they walk a little bit, or even if two people have the same disability, like I mentioned, and that it's important for people to listen.
We live in the most technologically advanced era in all of eternity right now, right? Like especially with all the advances in AI and the great things that social media has done and the many people it can reach. This is a distinct advantage that we have that Judy Human and the other disability advocates before us did not have. Can you imagine what their reach would be like if they had all the technology that we have today? If they had Facebook, if they had Instagram, if they had WhatsApp, how many people could they reach? We have this opportunity in the here and now, which is why I think that it's critical for especially organizations of disability movements such as the Green Party, the National Federation of the Blind, Disability In, to really bolster up their technology skills so that they can reach that broader audience and engage everyone fully. Maybe this could be through speeches, Zoom meetings. This could be maybe done through Instagram shorts or TikTok videos, especially nowadays that the attention span of a lot of, especially our younger demographic is short, right? So some of these messages are going to have to be created and strategically crafted in a way that's captivating yet informative. I also think that a few other ways to kind of get the message out there of disability movements and rights in general is having some sort of inclusive game nights, whether that be playing games that are made for both a disabled person and someone without a disability to play. One great company that I would love to shout out is Unicorn Soda Designs. They are a local company here in Utah, and they make games that are accessible for blind people. And these adjustments vary in like texture and color for people who are low vision, who have some vision, and we can play together. Maybe even reaching out to some sporting leagues and having a sort of a spectating night. Like the Utah Association of Blind Students had something like that this year where we went to a jazz game, a game that we actually won. And we were like, it's the reason they won is because we were there. That's why.
Obviously,
Exactly.
obviously,
Exactly.
yes.
I bet they didn't see that coming, you know? But anyway, we invited a lot of students in our example from the University of Utah to come and spectate a basketball game blind. What does that mean? Well, basically, we all gathered in the a random room at the university and you watched the game not on TV, but through the radio, because not a lot of people have done that before. And so we were able to have a conversation like, wow, so this is what it's like. This is what it's like to not be able to see the game, yet I can still somehow imagine it in my mind because I know the rules and everything, right? And so that opened a discussion for uh, perceived barriers, and we were able to create some semblance of understanding between those who could see and those who couldn't. And it was a really successful event. And yeah, those are a few ways that I think would be great measures to implement.
How much would the game have been if Hot Rod was still around?
Oh,
See, there you go.
way better, man. Way
I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea how to answer this question. Thinking about it for days and days and days, and I have no idea how to answer this question.
Really fine. Yeah, it's a tricky problem, but yeah. All right, then we've got we'll have one more question here, and then we can, if we have some time left over, we'll be able to turn it over to audience questions or any other questions that might get posed after that. So you can start thinking about that if you haven't already. For this last question, I'd like to ask, what does meaningful progress look like for persons with disability?
Yeah, I'll be brief because I know it's shocking, but I'll be brief because several folks have touched on pieces of these already. So even though it's a unique case, progress looks like the Free Britney movement, which was the introduction to the realities of guardianship for many. it looks like Notting Hill, Speechless, and Rummy, where a character has a disability that's only part of who they are and isn't central to the story of their character or the story as a whole. And it looks like your neighbor, your teacher, your coworker, and your legislator with a disability.
One thing I have to say is acceptance. A lot of people don't want to accept a person for being disabled. And you know, one statement I've made before and is convenience doesn't equal accessibility. Accessibility equals convenience. And personally, I hate the word convenience, because when someone who's not disabled will use the fact of, oh, I'm so sorry, it's inconvenient for you. I look at it as being, accessible. If something's accessible for a disabled person, it's accessible for someone who's not. Whether they need to use that service or a something like a wheelchair, like it was mentioned earlier, anyone can end up with a disability at any point in their life. And I would have to say that being able to, with everything I've said before, being able to be listened to, not to have to prove that you need help when you need it, but yet not to have to prove that you don't need help either, because there are times that people will want to help me when I don't need help, but then there'll be times when I need it. And I have had people tell me that I need to do more, which it's important, like I mentioned earlier, it's important to listen to the person.
Well, ideally, progress would look like if any disability movements uh proposed a bill, it would be signed right away. That's ideal, right? So no, if there's no questions, ideal, that would be great. But being more realistic, I think that understanding, if I'm able to communicate with anyone, whether that be my professor, my future employer, or even just a random person on the street, that there is a problem of accessibility, if they're able to kind of step into my shoes and I'm able to explain to them that this bus stop is hard for me to find because it's a temporary bus stop and that doesn't show up. It's kind of hard for blind people to access that because it's not really at a place that's readily accessible. This is just an example. If they're able to understand where I'm coming from, and kind of empathize with me, that I consider that a win. Why? Because I just informed someone on an issue that they were blind to, and I'm opening their eyes to a new perspective. And people talk, people know each other, right? And hopefully maybe that can lead to a much bigger conversation one day. A story that I can think of is every year the NFB puts on something called the Washington Seminar, and that's basically where we all gather in DC, and there are 3 legislative priorities that we want to bring, and we meet. Each state affiliate meets with their representatives and senators from their prospective state and talk about these issues. And I remember specifically talking to Bridges Owens about the Website Software Accessibility Applications Act that, of course, we would like to pass. And I had a very in-depth conversation with him because he didn't understand that I, as a blind student, need access to not just the internet, but like all online applications. And this bill touched on the accessibility of websites for small businesses and large corporations and everything. And he asked me so many questions about this. And I don't know if he decided to champion the bill or not, or push for it to go to the floor, but as long as he understands that this is an issue, and I'm not the only person dealing with this issue. I consider that a win. And as a person with disability, that's what you're gonna have to do every day. People always ask me questions. Oh, you're blind? That's cool. And when I'm able to inform someone about my specific and unique challenges and how I go about living the life that I want, that is a win for me. And I know that I'm not the only one, regardless of disability, who has to do the same thing. And when you do it all together, especially in a movement like this, like the Greenhouse Party, imagine all the great things that could happen.
Man, progress look like not having to ask for help to do something because the bar you need to do it is already there. Universal design being the norm is what progress would look like for me, because like it would be easier to get around. I could actually use my wheelchair inside the house if I need to, if things were designed in a way where things were bigger or otherwise more accessible. It looks like educating people from early on up on what a disabled person is and how they're just like you, except a little bit different. The things that people have specified here throughout the time of this panel, having some of those things implemented, having most of those things implemented, would create a world where disabled people didn't have to struggle as much, and that would be progress for me and a lot of people. I worry about, you know, the generations of disabled people that come up after me, because there's been such a coordinated attack on accessibility as a concept. You got a president in office that attached accessibility to DEI, which they already didn't like, just to take it out on us too. And I'm just like, wow, okay, that's unexpected. I mean, I was not expecting him to go that far, but they're trying to remove almost all accessibility things now. And if we put those things back, strengthen those things back by putting them into legislation that gets passed, and it's federal, so it has to apply to the entire country. If we could just change the building codes, for example, you'd have a situation where in the future of the country, you have buildings and places for everyone to go that everyone can use regardless of what their ability status might be. You've got more parks like Shane's Inspiration and other places that are like designed so that kids with disability can play and feel normal like the children in Crip Camp. I didn't know that such like summer camps for disabled kids existed, or I made a try to go to one, and that probably would have helped me out like self-esteem wise considering. But like a world where disabled people don't have to work 5 times as hard to do what most people do every day is what progress looks like. And I want to figure out how we can get there. I just don't exactly know. I got some ideas listening to the subject matter experts on this panel, so thank y'all.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, well, we have just a little bit of time left. Do we have any questions that anyone would like to pose from the audience? Steve, please.
Okay. Is it, yeah. So this question, I think I'm going to direct to Andrew, and then anybody else, anybody else can weigh in on this as well. But how has the legislation on supported decision-making opened up the doors for individuals with disabilities?
Across the country, it has, because let's see, I think we're at maybe 21 states now have adopted some version of supported decision making. And as of May 7th, Utah is the most recent addition to that list. What for those who may not know, in brief, supported decision making is the idea that a person with a disability who doesn't want to give their decision making authority to somebody else in a legal sense, but would like but needs or would like somebody to help them gather the information that they need to make a decision, evaluate or understand that information, help them know what questions to ask and where to find the answer to get to the best decision for them. And you can do all of this informally now, of course. But what the legislation does is it will it says to the professional, like a lawyer, a teacher, a doctor, or a banker, that that you have to let my supporter be a part of the conversation, and if I want my supporter to help me communicate my decision to you, that whatever they tell you my decision is my decision, and you have to treat it as such, even though they are the ones communicating it to you. So this is really exciting because it is essentially another alternative to guardianship, but it is the only alternative to guardianship that allows decision-making authority to always remain with the individual and does not give that authority to another person, where every other alternative gives at least some of your authority to another person. So, yeah.
If any of the other panelists would like to say anything on that.
Yeah, just move them all the way. They're speechless.
If not, we can open up for another question.
Well, I guess this is a question for everybody, is what can we here in this room today take away with us to put into action?
We have to keep fighting. With disability, we don't just go home and hang our disability up in the closet. And like, there's people who are not disabled that will they might say, oh, it's hard right now, but a lot of disabled people don't have that as a choice. It's not, oh, I'm just going to go take a break from my disability. It's like I mentioned earlier, disability is part of our lives. It's part of who we are. And, what I take away is that we have to fight. And it would be nice if one day we didn't have to fight anymore. But the reality is that we still have to keep fighting it.
I would say to go along with keep fighting, keep learning about the other disabilities that are out there. I know for myself, I don't know everything about every disability out there and the various challenges. Oh, oh. Um, but continue learning about other people with disabilities and their struggles because uh then you're gonna be a more informed person. And when you do hear about what this legislation is, people are trying to advocate for, no matter what group it comes from, I think you'll be able to align yourself better with them and you'll be able to understand them a little bit more, and the message will mean more to you, and you will then become advocates yourselves. You'll become an advocate of someone who has a disability, and I feel like this long chain can lead to really, really big things and really big changes, and just add overall to a more informed advocate.
I'm gonna be a little self-serving here. And say two things. One, just from a very practical and immediate standpoint. Visit disabilitylawcenter.org/public-policy to find out more about what's going on right now, and especially how the one big beautiful bill and particularly the Medicaid pieces of it will potentially impact Utahns with disabilities specifically. But my partner Nate and I also do semi-regular updates about what's going on in the disability policy world in Utah. So you can watch the DLC's Policy Corner videos on our website as well. And then the second thing is I mentioned it earlier, but I think it is really, and I think others have mentioned it as well. It is the key, and that is get engaged, find other people, other groups, and join up with them, whether they are disability groups, and just a variety of different disabilities in coalition, or whether disability is just one piece of a much larger coalition of groups that have shared interests and common interests, but from different perspectives. It will broaden all of our horizons. Plus, it will give us all much more confidence to go out and be forceful in our message, and in stating what we need and expect. And it will, if we can come together and have a bigger, make those in power think that we could potentially have an impact on whether they are going to have a comfortable stay in office, or whether they are going to be returned to office. If we are able to do that, that is the thing that is going to make at least our elected officials listen to us. If if we can actually find a way to convince them that they do need us to vote for them.
Shannel, would you like to say anything about the question, or?
If the question could be repeated, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, so the question was, what can we as a group or as individuals take away from this discussion and from the film, and take into our lives going forward?
Okay, well, from this film, I know I'm taking back the reminder that I'm part of a powerful community of people, and if we just come together with a shared central idea, we can get what we need to get done. It's just a matter of really coming together, seeing where each other's strengths are, and making the choice to be a disruption, to be a problem to the status quo, so you can get things done that you need to get done. I can't believe that they managed to have a sit-in for that long that was unplanned. But nowadays we have all these tools to make it possible for us to plan better for what we need to get done so we can have those necessary like sit-ins and protests and things that change the course of the world. Although we shouldn't be using Discord for those things because Discord has a backdoor from the US government, so it's hard to plan a protest with Discord properly. But for other communications things, sure.
Or not use.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I would just like to thank all of our excellent panelists here. We are incredibly grateful for the time that they've spent and shared with us to come here and be with us, to share their expertise, their knowledge, their experience, and their perspective. This, I know for my part, this has been very instructive and hopeful, and also eye-opening in a lot of ways. So thank you so much. And thank you to our audience too for participating and being here with us.